Greetings and Shalom. Now this video is going to be about this book called The Lost Tribe from Outer Space by Mark Dim. Now if you've been on my platform or my page, I've talked about the so-called black man, aka the blue man. And oftentimes in Hollywood, they tell us who the Most High is through the movies, through satire, imagery, and so forth. And they know that the so-called black man are the people of the book. And this is known among the upper crest, the elite people, among the upper groups or the inner circles. That's why they look at us, the so-called blacks, as proverbial gods, meaning what? Judges, believe it or not. So we're going to look at this book and read a few pages to see what this so-called white man or Jewish man states about the tribes of Israel. Now we're on page 17, and it states, Yahawah does not have the same functions as the Elohim of the first chapter. There is a fundamental difference between them. Elohim creates the sky and the earth, light, the succession of days and nights, the firmament, atmosphere, plant life, the moon and the sun, animals, and finally man. It is all done in apparent disorder, but what seems disorderly to us may not be so from the viewpoint of a mode of thought different from ours. As for Yahawah, he plays a secondary role. He has two functions: improving the planet, he irrigates, he plants a garden, and forming man. But was man not created by the first God mentioned by Elohim? It seems so. Then why that second creation? That is our fourth enigma. It will set off the second click and lead me to formulate the hypothesis that is the source of this book. To put it in better perspective, let us return to Yahawah. He appears at the beginning of the second chapter, and from there to the end of the Old Testament, he is substituted for the Almighty who created the world. This Yahawah is designated by different names, including Elohim, sometimes in the plural, but it is impossible to confuse him with the supreme being who made the universe. First of all, he does not create. He formed a man from the dust of the ground, Genesis 2:7. That is how he gave birth to Adam, and he fashioned woman from man. He is a being who moves in the human manner. When he wants to speak with Adam, he goes to look for him in the garden and calls out to him, "Where are you?" This is not a God who knows and sees everything. When his product, Adam, fails to give him the satisfaction he expected, he regrets having made him. Page 18. Yet Yahawah is not himself a man. He has vast scientific knowledge and immense powers. As we study him later in this book, we will see those powers and their limits. Yahawah might be defined as a humanoid immeasurably superior to men. He is not God. The confusion between him and God originated largely in the fact that they both came down from the sky. The question can be put in the form of a riddle. What resembles a man, but is much more highly evolved, has scientific and technological knowledge far in advance of ours, and comes from the sky? I am not the first to say it, but that makes no difference. Yahawah strongly resembles a being from another planet with a civilization that has advanced to the stage where it can send explorers into space. Unexpectedly, it is the development of space technology and nuclear physics more than archaeology that has in our recent years come to the aid of biblical interpretation. Other disciplines such as biology also give a hand to those who try to decipher the book over which so many eyes have grown dim. Until the middle of the 20th century, it would have not occurred to anyone to see Yahawah as a space traveler, or if someone had conceived the idea, he would not have dared to express it. Today, we have only to reread the Bible in the light of that hypothesis to see that the many apparent contradictions in it disappear, and what was formerly obscure becomes drizzily clear. It is important to say explicitly here, though I will try to make it plain in the course of my exposition, that this is not the core of my thesis. The fourth enigma that must be resolved concerns Adam, who was formed from the dust of the ground at a time when man had already been created. I will take a great step forward by suggesting that this was a special kind of creation. the manufacture of a couple, a human breeding stock, from already existing materials into which Yahawah breathed the breath of life, his own. The couple thus formed did not correspond to a stage, a natural evolution, like the men who God had already placed on the earth in the course of the 6-day creation after plants and animals. Yahawah performed a biological operation in accordance with a plan and a body of knowledge that he had brought with him. Adam and Eve can therefore be regarded as a breeding stock that he imported for a specific purpose. Let us here recall something of great importance. Yahawah, since the vowels are not written in Hebrew, I will respect the practice of using only the consonants, is, in the opinion of all commentators, the national God of Israel. And now, with this in mind, let us consider the fact that the Old Testament is a Jewish book, meaning what? A book of Negroes, or the Hebrewic book. As Josanne Carpentier aptly writes, these sacred texts refer almost exclusively, there's that word exclusively, to the Jewish or Judean people, meaning what? The 12 tribes, and show little concerns with other peoples except in relation to Israel.
I don't see God's book around, Walter.
I'm sorry.
Sorry is for those seeking forgiveness. Are you seeking forgiveness, Walter?
Forgiveness for what, Reverend?
Vivian said you told her that God is black.
I simply posed it as a possibility.
We don't speculate on God's color, Walter. If you ever want Vivian to speak to you again, go upstairs and tell her that God is white.
But we're really not sure. I mean, the Hindus don't believe it, the Muslims, the Buddhists.
God is white. It's simple logic. His son is white.
That's not proof. I'm white, my son is black.
We have found the black complexion or something relating to it whenever we have approached the origin of nations. The alma mater, the goddess Multimammia, the founders of the oracles, the Memnon of first idols were always black. Venus, Jupiter, Apollo, Bacchus, Hercules, Astaroth, Adonis, Horus, Apis, Osiris, and Amen. In short, all the deities were black. They remained as they were first in very ancient times.
It is time for the second click. If instead of then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground, we read then Yahawah formed the Jews, meaning what? The Judeans, from the dust of the ground.
Cursed be the ground for our sake. Both thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for us. For out of the ground we were taken, for the dust we are. And to the dust we shall return.
All four of our enigmas are solved at once. On the earth created by God, a space traveler implanted a breeding stock to be the origin of his people, a distinct chosen people, the prince of peoples, who were given special attention by that powerful being from elsewhere. Now we're in the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 17. Right here it states, verse 1, the Lord Yahawah created man of the earth and turned him into it again. He gave them a few days and a short time, and power also over the things therein. We're going to skip down. Verse 10, and the elect shall praise his holy name. Besides this, he gave them knowledge and the law of life for a heritage. Psalms 147 and 19. The heritage was for what? The 12 tribes, Jacob. He made an everlasting covenant with them and showed them his judgments. Okay. Let's see, verse 15. Their ways are ever before him and shall not be hid from his eyes. Every man from his youth is given to evil, neither could they make to themselves fleshly hearts for stony. For in the division of the nations of the whole earth, he set a ruler over every people. But Israel is the Lord's portion. Precept to that is Deuteronomy 32 and 9. Deuteronomy 32 and 9. For the Lord or Yahawah's portion is his people. Jacob is a lot of his inheritance. Reading on, the Judeans are not of this earth, and that is why they have always been oppressed by other peoples. Their oppression is like the process of rejection that sometimes occurs in organ transplants. The Bible is not simply the story of one little people among others. The intense life that emanates from it and has forced men's attention for thousands of years comes from the hidden message it contains. I will try to throw some light on that message. What is a Jew? The product of a selective process carried out through the ages by methods that I may attempt to describe. The Jews come from space and they will return there. Interesting.
And so, as we say goodbye to our dark friends and neighbors, we say hello to a new era of American peace and prosperity.
Now we're back at the book, The Lost Tribes from Outer Space, and it states, what is ridiculous is to believe that those visitors brought man to Earth. His appearance can be adequately explained by the natural evolution of species. In other words, the gradual unfolding of the divine plan. You claim Yahawah brought him. Yahawah brought the Jews, or more exactly, a breeding stock from which was developed the branch that became the Jewish people. The Jews come from space. Why have you added, and they will return there? Because I'm holding a fifth enigma in reserve, the subtlest and most formidable of all. But we can't talk about it until we've dealt with the others. First, let's talk about the Jews arrive on Earth. Now, do I agree with everything that's been stated in this book? No, I do not. But we also have to look at this text with a grain of salt and also eat the meat and spit out the bones.
It basically said it wasn't suitable for the audience. The reason why it's not suitable for the audience is because I even uploaded the video to the channel. It was in silence, so I only basically redacted everything down to 5 seconds. But what it's going to be showing you is a person. They have a front garage camera in front of their house, and it shows you the skyline going from black, blue to green, and then you're going to see a UFO in the background. Go back, Simon. Now, you can see right here at the top, right here where my cursor is, you can actually see the UFO. Because as I was telling you before, UFOs operate from gamma radiation, which is a form of fourth octave ether. The ether is extracted from radiation from the ground and also radiation from all technological devices within the infrastructure of the atmosphere that's connected to the ecoy system of that UFO. So it's an extraction process in order for it to cloak itself. So this was a cloaked UFO, and also when you look at the color spectrum in the background, you see the green etheric energy. That's gamma radiation, ether. Ether absorbs everything in order to hide its form to where it's basically non-corporeal. See? You see that? I'm going to play it again. Go back, son. Crazy. So like I said, it's a wonderful time to be alive right now.
The fifth enigma. The Jews come from space and they will return there. As we have seen, the earth has been a test tube for Yahawah since the failure of his initial plan. One does not make something in a test tube and then leave it there. Someday Yahawah will come back, not discreetly, as he has done several times in the course of history, from the end of the Hebrews wandering in the desert to our own period, observing the development of the planet and changing the course of events when he sees fit. He will come back openly in all his radiance. Precautions will then have become useless. Blow the trumpet in Zion, sound the alarm upon my holy hill. Let all that live in the land tremble, for the day of the Lord has come. Joel 2:1. All of the Jewish history, with its mysteries, paradoxes, and unparalleled durability, rests on the pact made between the extraterrestrial and his people, a pact that can be expressed as follows. Interesting.
Interesting.
They don't want black people to know that they have extraterrestrial ancestry. Right, and you were being told that black people didn't serve in the space program. Right, and there were people from all races. Right, very interesting.
Reading on, you are exiles on this planet. I brought you here at the beginning of your history, and I will return for you when the time has come to take you to the real land I hold in store for you. You are hated, persecuted, and despised by the nations. Sounds a lot like the Negroes here in the Americas and the four corners around the earth, right? But you are superior to your persecutors because they will disappear in fire and brimstone, while you will live and be exalted. Follow my way to the end, and I will fulfill my promises. Now we're on page 161, and it states, yes, someday Yahawah will return. His spaceships will land, and his assembled Jews, meaning what, the 12 tribes, will board them for an unknown but happy destination. Now we've seen a glimpse of this on the show Cosmic Slop, right? Where all the quote-unquote so-called blacks or Negroes boarded the spaceships unwillingly. Reading on, he will recover his patiently fashioned people and take them to another abode. Like Enoch and Elijah, they will be taken away. Okay, so right here we have Planet of the Apes. Now this movie came out around 2000, 2001, Tim Burton with Mark Wahlberg. Now if you know anything or have a spiritual eye, the Planet of the Apes series or movies is talking about the so-called blacks or black rulership, but more specifically in the scriptures, the 12 tribes of Israel. Now there's a certain scene in the movie Planet of the Apes where Caesar comes down in a spacecraft. Now, interesting enough, when you read this book right here, it talks about Yahawah and his spacecraft. But we know that the Israelites, at least in the movie, they represent the apes or the so-called blacks. But interesting enough, there's a connection with this book and the movie. So now we're on page 24, and it states, in reality, what the Jews, meaning what the 12 tribes, were waiting for was Yahawah and no one else. The Lord, meaning what master, who has formed them from the dust of the ground. His presence had been manifested periodically since the beginning of their history. He was their shepherd, their master. But who is Yahawah? I have already described how he was fundamentally different from the Almighty, the creator of the universe. Everything leads us to believe that he came from another planet. Which planet, in what region of space, we do not know, but we do know how he appeared to dazzle the eyes of earthlings. We can draw a precise description of him from hundreds of passages in the Bible, provided we make a second basic distinction. The Bible, the name Yahawah designates two different entities, Yahawah himself and the spaceship in which he came, both the container and the contained. All the misinterpretations made by commenters have come from the fact that they have not seen this double meaning of the key word in the Bible. It is easily explained from the viewpoint of primitive psychology. When Yahawah came to Earth in his spacecraft, as he did on several occasions in historic and prehistoric times, it was a spacecraft that men regarded as God. Recent examples help us to understand this. When explorers made contact with members of a certain tribe in New Guinea, they were amazed to discover that they worshiped the male plane that flew over their territory every afternoon at 6 o'clock. Earthlings looked on Yahawah's spacecraft as a god. It filled them with fear and respect, but from it came a being who resembled a man in general structure and yet was superior enough to have the same divinity conferred on him, and he was called by the same name. Now it says right here, Return of the Planet of the Apes, and it states, Planet of the Apes can be seen as containing a double allegory regarding race. Race meaning what? Seed line. One allegory codes white humans as white humans with Taylor as their representative and codes black humans as apes. Okay, so they're mocking us. Reading on, there is proof of this confusion, and I will cite it. First, however, we must look more closely at the conditions under which the singular visitor came to our world in the remote past. And this will end part 1, The Lost Tribes from Outer Space, because in all essence, this is talking about our history, our Hebrewic book. And like always, eat the meat and spit out the bones. Peace.